During this tutorial, we're going to look at some of the default objects in the event editor that are always in the event editor. So I've opened up a new application, and if we go to the frame editor, we can see we don't see any objects. But then if we move over to the event editor, we can see we do actually have some objects here. They're just not visible objects. First, we're going to look at the conditions for these objects. So we're going to look at adding new conditions. We looked at this before. We can either click new condition. I'm going to cancel that. We can right click, and then it will bring up the same window. We can click on the event number over here. We can right click that and choose add new condition. And then, so let's just add a condition here. So we'll look at special conditions. Let's see what special conditions we have. We can have an always condition, which will specify to always do the thing. So every frame it will do that event. That event will happen. That is set to the condition always. Then we have never condition, which will never do that. We can compare to global values. We haven't looked at global values yet, but we'll look at those later. And same with global strings. We can compare to general values. I'm going to look at this. Now what we can do is we can retrieve data from any object and have it here. And then we can retrieve data from another object and have that here. We're going to look at how to do this in depth in later tutorials, but for now we can see these. We can see that we can choose equal, different, lower, or equal, lower, greater, or equal, or greater. One thing, it doesn't always have to be numbers here. We can write text too, but if you're going to add text, then you will have to put the text in quotes. So you put text and then an ending quote, but the actual text that it will check is the text inside of the quotes. And then we could compare that, and then we can retrieve data from objects. And we can see that we can retrieve data from any object that we wanted. So I'm going to do new condition again, and we'll look at limit conditions. What we can do here is say that we want to run in a certain event only once. And then we could also say that we only want one of the actions to happen when this event, when one action to happen when the event loops. Then we could repeat, and then we could restrict. We're going to look at, we're not going to look at this for now, application menu. That refers to our application menu. We'll look at this setting here when we look at the properties. Have files been dropped? Is text available in clipboard and on loop? We'll talk about most of those later. Sound. We have the sound object here. We can use all these. We're going to look at these in the sound tutorials. But then we do have our start of frame, end of application, end of pause, and then if we can say if is an obstacle, so then we would have to enter an x coordinate and y coordinate, but I'm not going to look at all the things for now. Then we have the timer. This is a very important object. We can say that we want to do something every so often. So if I choose every, we get this dialog box, and then we can move these little sliders along, or we can edit the text inside of here. So I'm going to move it to about 10 seconds. Then we could see we could do something every 10 seconds. We could make an action happen. Now, one more thing I want to do while we have this condition here is we can look at how we can add multiple conditions to the same line here. So if we right click and choose insert, then I could choose another condition here, such as samples is a sample not playing. So now the events that are specified over here would happen if both of these are true. I'm just gonna delete this for now. Oh, one more thing. If we right click on the event number and choose insert, add a new condition, we can also insert the same way we did by right clicking. Then there's some other options here, such as comments and new event and groups of events. Okay, so I'm gonna delete this event. We can select an event by clicking on the number, and then we can just press the delete button. Then I'll choose new condition again. And now we can move on to new objects. So let's see. This is usually used for, we can find the number of objects in a certain area, and then we could say if there's no objects in a certain area, we could count the total number of objects and compare it to another number. And most of these we're going to look at later tutorials. One important thing here is the mouse and keyboard. So let's look at this keyboard. We could choose upon pressing a key. If we choose this, then we'll get this dialog box and we can press the key that we want. So I'm just going to choose enter. So now upon pressing the enter key, this event will happen. Now I'm going to delete this. New condition. And we'll look at repeat while key is pressed. So this would be if we put we'll get this same box and I press enter. So this would be if we are holding down the key, then this would happen over and over again while the key was held down. Now I'm going to delete this condition. New condition. Keyboard upon pressing any key. This is self-explanatory. If any key on the keyboard is pressed, then the event is going to happen. I'm going to delete that. New condition. Right click, mouse, and now we have some options for our mouse. Check for mouse pointer in a zone. So if we do this, then we would get this box here. We can stretch out this box to however much we want. We can also use these numbers here to edit it. And this box would be if the mouse pointer is in this box. So I'm just going to cancel that. Then I'm going to look at our other mouse. Check for mouse pointer over an object. So if we had an object in our frame, which we don't have any visible objects right now in our frame, then we could check if the mouse pointer is on top of that object. We can also have user clicks. So if the user clicks anywhere in the application, then this would happen. So if user clicks and we get this dialog, we can either choose the left button, the middle button, the right button, and a single click or a double click. The middle button, if you don't know, is the scroll wheel on your mouse. If you press it down, that would be specified as the middle button. So I'm going to cancel that. New condition. Now we have one more thing here. We're not going to look at this for now though, because we are going to look at this later. So that's all. That's all for our conditions, and now we're going to look at some events. So I'm just going to add a standard condition here so that we can look at these events. So here we have our special conditions. So right click, we can open another executable file with a fixed path name or an evaluated path name. So if we had an execute file that we wanted to open when during this event, then we could choose that here. We would choose fixed path name, and then we would be able to browse for it. Now I'm going to go to change global values, not right now. We're going to look at the application menu. The application menu, if we run our application, this is the application menu. Up here, the file menu, the options menu, and the help menu. That is the application menu. So we could choose things here to be in that, to manipulate objects in that menu here. Clipboard, we can send text to clipboard and we can clear the clipboard. Fast loops, we're not going to look at those now. And that's all we're going to look at in the special conditions. We're going to look at sound in a later tutorial. Storyboard controls, we can go to the next frame, we can go to the previous frame, we can jump to a frame, we can restart the current frame. All of these are very self-explanatory. We can pause the application, we can scroll, center window, scrolling options here. We have all these different options. We're not going to look at these for now. We do have our timer. We can set the timer to a certain value here. Then we have create new objects. We can create another object. So say we already had an active object in our frame. So I'm just going to try this. Insert object. And I'm going to get an active object here. So now I'm just going to put that off screen and go back to the event editor. So we're going to create an object. And then we can see all our objects that are in the application here. So you can just select one, and then you press OK, and then you will get this box to select the coordinates. We looked at the coordinates before, if you remember. Right here is 0, 0, and then the pixels go down. The positives go across, and the positives, it'll get more positive as you go down in the Y's. So we can choose our layer. We haven't looked at layers yet, but we can just basically choose our XY coordinates that we want to create this object at. So that looks good, and we can see this dot here is representing where it is. So I'm going to press OK. And now if we run our application, we can see that the create object at the start of the frame, it created an object in the spot that we specified. So now we have our keyboard. Hide Windows mouse pointer, show Windows mouse pointer, very self-explanatory. And then we have player 1. We're going to look at this when we look at scoring later. That's going to be all for our events. We're going to look at the expressions for these events in a later tutorial.